Wembley Stadium, the home of English football, where every single player aspires to get to in their footballing careers. Though for these world-class players to get to the centre stage, they need world-class agents to get them there. And trust me, they do not come cheap. You just can't seem to keep football agents out of the media at the moment. Transfer records are being broken left, right and centre, and these agents are at the forefront of these deals. With the likes of Paul Pogba costing around the 90 million mark, agents are most definitely in the media for the wrong reasons, being portrayed as these cowboys who are only after just one outcome. 10 years ago this stadium had just opened, and player agents were becoming more and more effective in the game. 10 years later, agents are more pivotal and powerful as ever. Is this down to the money? Is this down to player power? Or is it just down to modern day football? I'm on a mission to find out just how powerful and dominant these agents have become in not just the English game, but worldwide. Throughout this journey, I wanted to get to the bottom of how exactly these agents have become almost a third wheel between player and the club's relationship, and London is the heart of where all these top agents carry out their business. The first person to help me out on this quest was TalkSport's Danny Kelly, who has an impressive knowledge of the football industry and can shed a light on how the role of a football agent has massively changed in the last few decades. So Danny, cast your mind back about 10 years ago or so. What can you remember roughly about the role of a typical Premier League football agent?
You talk about 10 years ago. I think this all started a little bit before that, and I think the role of the agent has grown in the exact proportion, and you know what the next words out of my mouth are going to be, to the money that goes into the game. There was almost no need for agents for a long time because A, players' contracts were so extraordinarily simple, and B, there wasn't enough money actually changing hands to make a third party necessary. And I guess the change has been from sitting there negotiating one contract with a football club that you intend to be there for 5 or 6 years, to agents who now have strings of clients and are organising every aspect of their life, and are also looking to move the players around the chessboard of international football because they are going to earn off the back of the players' movements.
I remember roughly about 10 years or so ago now, wasn't it, Ashley Cole's move from Chelsea to Arsenal back in, I think, 2006. And Cole and his agent, of course, met Mourinho and Co in a London hotel. And this was even when Cole was still contracted to Arsenal. This was over 10 years ago. Do you still think that agent power has continued to grow ever since then?
I think the business with Ashley Cole was a particularly odd situation. London football clubs there's a half a dozen very big clubs in London. They're all very close to each other. The players all know each other. The players talk to each other, go out together. And that hotel where Ashley Cole and his agent were caught is the Landmark Hotel, which is itself a hotbed. It's like it occupies the position that Marrakesh used to occupy during the Second World War. Even warring factions meet there because, of course, it's the first very, very posh hotel if you're coming in from Heathrow into central London. So all football agents stay there. All football administrators stay there if they're staying over in London. And it's also the place where these kind of deals get done. Now, they were stupid enough to get themselves photographed. My guess is they did it deliberately because they wanted to put Cole in a position where he couldn't stay at Arsenal.
So do you think that it's right that these days agents get to pocket such a large sum of their players' transfer fee?
This is the amount of money paid to the agents is the single biggest problem with all of these things, and it's a disgrace. And it's a disgrace and a problem for two linked reasons. The money has to be found from inside football, which just means from football fans. And whether you're paying at the gate, buying the pies at half time, or buying the TV subscriptions, however you are consuming your football, you're paying the football clubs for the benefit, for the privilege, if that's what it is, of watching these teams play. The agents provide none of that. They're not the club who provide the facilities, nor are they the player who provides the talent. So what effectively you have is tons of virtually unearned money going out of the game into the pockets of the agents. And it's a vast amount of money. If you add it all up across the transfer windows in Europe, South America, China, etc., it is a huge, and it's a separate industry on its own. Agents' fees are now a bigger industry, I would suggest, the whole of football was 15 years ago. If you took all the money earned by football clubs 15 years ago, it's probably less than what agents earn now. The second part of that is the disgraceful part of it, and that is because why is it being done the way it is? I have an agent. I work in entertainment media, I have an agent. His job is to go into the radio station, the TV station, the newspaper or the magazine that I'm working for and get me the best deal he can. Who pays him? Clearly I do, because it's to my benefit that he's working. In football, the agent goes in, screws the club to the ground, 200, 300, 400 grand a week please for my client. Who pays the agent? The club does. It's paying for your own torture.
And finally, Danny, as a journalist and a football lover, of course, do we have to just accept that, agent power is such a massive part of the game today, or should clubs and perhaps even the FA clamp down on this?
Clubs and the FA have got no interest in clamping down on it. As long as the gravy train rolls, the percentage that they're still getting is fantastic. As long as the television companies and we, the public, keep pouring money into the general drain from which they all suck, there's no reason to change anything. Nothing illegal is being done. It's slightly immoral. It's certainly not the best way to run the game, but the governance of the game is of no interest. When they say we couldn't run the game without agents, I do understand that you do need working class men, boys, girls, whoever it is, to be represented in these negotiations. Otherwise, the clubs would rip them off. But pay them the way normal agents are paid by the client themselves, and just stop being so dependent on what are literally people holding your head, you're holding a gun to your head. And if it means that Bayern Munich or Manchester United or Spurs or whoever miss out on one great player, with the exception of half a dozen in the entire world, there's another great player around the corner. And since those great players that have all play for the same two clubs, Barcelona and Real Madrid, the rest of the clubs could easily solve this in an afternoon's meeting. Bit of balls, bit of brains.
So as Danny mentioned in that interview, the Ashley Cole hotel saga was a key moment in the football agent timeline. In January 2005, Ashley Cole was thought to have held secret meetings with Chelsea while still being contracted at Arsenal. Cole was involved in the meeting along with his agent Jonathan Barnett, Chelsea manager Jose Mourinho and officials from the club. The FA later fined Cole, Mourinho and Chelsea for their actions. Barnett was also charged by the FA for conducting the meeting. The FA believed that Barnett breached Premier League rules in terms of illegal approaches to the clubs by players under contract. So this is the famous hotel where Ashley Cole had that secretive meeting with Chelsea back in 2005, which Danny mentioned in his interview. Of course, Ashley Cole got hit with a £100,000 fine, Jose Mourinho with a £200,000 fine, and of course Chelsea with a £300,000 fine. You could say this was the iconic moment where football agent and player power changed. It's more about fees these days, and the fees have increased as well as player power. Another respectable name in the journalism industry was next to cast their view. Jamie Wilson, deputy football correspondent for The Telegraph, follows many top clubs in the Premier League and knows how these agents tend to operate. So Jeremy, in your opinion, do you think football agents have impacted the game for the better or the worse?
I think it's hard to say overall. I know that's sitting on the fence a little bit because there's thousands of players and hundreds of agents. So I think in some aspects it's for the better. I think that there was a time when players were underrepresented and were exploited by the clubs, really. The balance of power was very much with the clubs previously. Now it's probably gone a little bit the other way, and there's certainly times where you can really sort of despair of some influences or decisions that are made for players, and you see things that you would worry about in terms of the influence that they're being put under and the pressure they're being put under to make different decisions. I think every transfer is not just about the player anymore, certainly at the top end. I think there's facets to every transfer that involve other people. So, I mean, the Pogba one last summer seemed to get delayed quite a bit on the fee to the agent once the player wanted to go. And I think there's quite a lot of transfers where that happens, where sorting out the agent's arrangement it almost takes as long as sorting out the players one. And the transfers that I suppose I dislike the most or worry me the most are the ones where you get a young player who might be playing regularly somewhere, maybe in like the Championship or League One or maybe a lower Premier League club. They get picked up by a bigger Premier League club and then they end up sort of sat on the bench for a few years, and it really harms their development. And they're the ones that I think is that, were they advised for them, or were they advised for the money that's would sort of come out of a transfer? I think players have got to take a bit of responsibility as well, and I think it's easy. I don't like some of what happens, but I think it's easy to just blame the agents as well. I think the players are mostly they're adults, and I think they've got to decide. The sense we get is that it's much more centralised with sort of 2 or 3 big kind of super agents that certainly with the big clubs that do a lot of the deals, and that the smaller agents find it harder and harder to survive really, and that it's, I suppose, a sort of monopoly situation that you get in a lot of industries where there's now 3 or 4 groups that hold a lot more power than the smaller agents. So that it does feel like it has changed in that way, and there's certainly agents and agencies that are synonymous with certain clubs as well. I think the direction of travel is that they are getting more and more powerful, and it doesn't seem that it's that likely to stop unless you sort of get a series of really bad incidents and you sort of there's a feel that it's sort of move for players to take back control a little bit more, which I hope would happen. I do think the PFA should be more active in this space. I don't understand why those players that do have agents that are very sort of quite have a big influence over big parts of their life, and maybe appear to be making decisions that are as much about themselves as the players. I don't understand why the players sort of sit back a lot of the time and accept that.
Seen as the longest ongoing transfer saga in many years, Paul Pogba's record-breaking deal taken into Manchester United last summer was rather dominated by his agent Mino Raiola. Raiola pocketed around £20 million of the deal, making it football's first £100 million transfer. Pogba's former club Juventus were unwilling to sacrifice their profit on Pogba by allowing Raiola's fee to affect the transfer fee. Raiola is much known in the agent industry. His other clients such as Zlatan Ibrahimovic and Henrik Mkhitaryan both play for Manchester United, having a big influence on getting the Pogba deal over the line. Money really is at the forefront of the game right now, and these big English sides like Arsenal are allowed to move into multi-million-pound stadiums like the Emirates due to TV rights, European football, tickets and merchandise sales. Though with all the money they're making, surely agents are able to do the same. My final stop on this journey was a trip to Base Soccer, a football agency which looks after over 100 Premier League and Championship players. Doran Solomon, who is in charge of the digital and media side of the agency, has been at the company for around 6 years and believes that these agents that he works alongside with are only trying to keep up with today's modern game, with the industry only getting more and more competitive.
In terms of the change in the industry, I think you have to look back to the deregulation that started 2 years ago when the agency regulations were changed. So previously you'd had to sit an exam as well as pay to sit that exam to get your licence. And whilst it wasn't a particularly difficult exam, there was a lot of reading material to it. Hundreds and hundreds of pages of documentation, books, all kinds of things that you'd have to understand to pass this multiple choice exam. And if you failed the exam, you had a window in which you could retake it, but then you'd have to wait maybe 12 months to take it again. So the barriers to entry in terms of to become a licensed agent were quite high. Now, to become an agent, you simply part ways with £500. You pay £500 to the FA, and you become an agent. So what you've seen is actually the number of licensed agents or intermediaries has tripled in 2 years. I think there is this perception that this industry is all about making money quite quickly, and I think that appeals to a lot of people. You read about your Jorge Mendes, Mino Raiolas, etc., who have fantastic clients and are making a lot of money on certain transfers. But actually, the reality is that's a very tiny percentage of agents who are doing deals like that. And when you think about, there are nearly 1,800 licensed intermediaries in the UK right now. There aren't even 1,800 players in the Premier League. It's up to us to do best by our clients. So when it comes to contract negotiations, transfers, whatever it is, it's for us as supposed football experts to get the right information to help our clients make judgments. So we might have to find out from the clubs what they truly think of the player. If it's a young player, what's his pathway like? If it's a senior player, is he playing a lot of football? Do we want to move him, sign him? And if we want to move him, do we think it's where can we move him to? What are the options we can present to him? All I can say is, as an agency, we've grown quite a bit in the last 5 years. A lot of the industry is about relationships, and it's about knowledge and getting information. And so for us, actually, it's so important to have relationships with every club, or as many clubs as possible. It wasn't long ago we did an exercise at one of our sort of team meetings, going through all 92 league clubs in England, working out who was the best point of contact within the agency for those clubs. And the reality is there isn't a club in this country that A, we haven't done business with, and B, we don't have a really strong relationship with. So having a strong relationship with clubs isn't just important for our clients, but actually important for our business in general.
Yeah.
Off the top of your head, can you talk us through the stereotypical role here at Base Soccer that an agent would play when trying to complete the transfer or a new deal for their clients, and how much work goes into the whole process?
Yeah, it's a long slog, as you might imagine. And some of these, particularly transfer discussions, might start taking place a year out, as you start to work out which players might have moves in them, which clubs might be looking for certain things. There is no, I can't give you a model as such as to how these things work, because case by case some are different. A deal that takes place on deadline day might have only occurred that day, and everything gets sorted in a matter of hours because of the urgency. I think you have to remember that football is such a spotlight industry. It's every single day it's being talked about. But also it's like any industry, you've got a lot of people who are really good at it, and you have some people who maybe are cowboys, maybe they bend the rules a bit, maybe they're doing things slightly offhand. What I'd say is actually there are a lot of good agents out there, a lot of good agents, good agencies, a lot of players getting good advice. There are a lot of agents who are doing some really good work. I might be wrong, but I think it was Gab Marcotti who wrote something a few years ago about how transfers just simply wouldn't work if there weren't agents. And you might look back to sort of 25 years ago when there weren't many agents at all and football still existed, transfers still function. But the way things work today is a different time. Agents are vital to getting deals done, not just on behalf of their clients, but on behalf of clubs. But there's so many games now that exist. The way people manipulate the media and the power that lies with players today, that sometimes you have to use the tools that are available to you to force certain things to happen, as long as they're legal and as long as people are doing things above board. Maybe that's why you'll continue to see so many stories about agents, but I would suggest that it's only people doing the best by their clients and trying to get things done. It's a highly pressurised industry, and at the top end of it, there's a lot of pressure on people to get things right.
So these top professionals in the industry have casted their views on the current state of football agents in today's modern game. Should we, the media, be cutting them some slack, or are they just trying to only make a living like the rest of us? One thing that is for certain though is that the power is most definitely shifting as each and every year passes.